A samurai kneels in a quiet courtyard. A short blade rests in front of him, wrapped in plain white cloth. His hands do not shake. His breathing does not change. In a few moments, he is going to open his own body with that blade, on purpose, in front of witnesses. And then a man standing behind him will end it with a sword. He is not afraid. You would assume the fear was death. It wasn't. The real answer is far stranger, and it is still running inside you right now. Samurai were not fearless. History remembers them that way, walking into battle with empty minds, trained past the point of panic. It is a clean story. It sells movies. It is also mostly wrong. Samurai were capable of deep, consuming fear. They just feared something most of us never think to name. Not the blade, not the fall. What terrified a samurai was being seen as weak, disloyal, or disgraced. Losing his place in the eyes of the people who mattered was a fate worse than dying, and an entire warrior class organized its whole existence around managing that single fear. To understand why, you have to understand what a samurai actually was. Not a lone wolf, not a solitary blade for hire. A samurai existed inside a web of obligations so tight it barely resembled individual identity at all. Historian Aiko Ikegami has spent decades studying this, and her research describes something she calls honorific individualism. A strange contradiction where a warrior's sense of self was built almost entirely from how his lord, his peers, and his ancestors judged him. Think about that for a second. Your worth was not something you decided. It was something other people decided, and you lived or died by their verdict. So when a samurai failed his lord, when he retreated from a battle he should have held, when he was accused of cowardice, the damage was not just social, it was existential. His name, his family's name, his ancestors' honor, all of it collapsed at once. And there was only one path left to reclaim any of it. Seppuku, ritual disembowelment, followed by a swift beheading from a second, performed with total composure. It sounds unimaginable today. But once you understand what it was solving, it starts to make a strange kind of sense. Seppuku was never about ending pain. It was about ending shame. A controlled death, performed with dignity, was the only way to convert public disgrace back into honor. Die badly, and your name rots. Die well, and your name survives you. The body was sacrificed to protect something the samurai valued more than the body itself, and that thing was reputation. Is that really so different from what happens inside you when you mess up in front of people you respect? Here is where the story stops being about medieval Japan and starts being about you. In the early 2000s, psychologist Kipling Williams ran an experiment called cyberball. Subjects played a simple ball-tossing game with two other players, except the other players were not real. They were controlled by a computer, and at a certain point, they simply stopped throwing the ball to the subject. No insults, no violence, just exclusion from a stranger inside a meaningless digital game. The subjects reported real emotional pain, not mild annoyance, genuine distress, the kind normally tied to physical injury. Around the same time, neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger scanned the brains of people going through social rejection and found something that should stop you cold. The same regions that light up during physical pain, the anterior cingulate cortex among them, activate during social exclusion too. Your brain does not have a separate system for heartbreak. it borrows the one built for broken bones. Why would evolution do that? Why would being ignored in a fake game feel anything like being hurt? Because for most of human history, exclusion was a death sentence. You did not survive alone on the savannah. You survived in a group, and a group that turned on you, that saw you as untrustworthy or weak, was a group that would eventually let you starve, or worse, cast you out to face predators and rival tribes with no protection at all. Social rejection was never an emotional inconvenience. It was the earliest warning system your ancestors had for imminent physical death. The samurai simply lived inside a system that made that ancient wiring explicit. Where most people feel the sting of exclusion and move on, samurai society built entire institutions around it, codifying honor and shame into law, ritual, and consequence. The fear was not invented by Bushido. It was already sitting inside every human nervous system. Bushido just gave it teeth. Historian Ivan Morris, in his study of Japanese cultural memory, noticed something else worth pausing on. The figures most celebrated across centuries of Japanese history are not the winners. They are the noble failures, warriors who fought bravely, lost anyway, and died with their dignity intact. Success was respected, but dignity under failure was worshipped. Doesn't that sound familiar? Think about how differently you judge someone who loses gracefully versus someone who wins by cheating. Something in you already knows. The difference matters more than the outcome. You do not live under a lord anymore. Nobody is asking you to fall on a sword. But watch yourself the next time you make a mistake in front of people you respect. Watch the heat rise in your face. Watch your mind start calculating damage, rehearsing explanations, searching for a way to recover your standing before anyone notices you slipped. That heat is not vanity, and it is not weakness either. It is the same ancient alarm that once governed the lives of Japan's warrior class, still wired into you, still running quietly in the background of every group chat you reread, every meeting you replay at night, every apology you rewrite 3 times before sending. You will probably check your phone again in the next hour. Maybe you already have a message sitting unanswered, and some small part of you is already building a story about what that silence means. Are they upset? Did you say something wrong? Do they think less of you now? That is not a small modern anxiety. That is an 800-year-old alarm, inherited whole, still convinced that being seen badly by someone you respect is a kind of death worth fearing. A samurai kneels in a quiet courtyard. The blade in front of him is real, and so is the silence around him. But the thing that actually frightens him isn't the edge of that steel. It's you, in a sense, centuries later, still kneeling too, still bracing for the verdict of people whose opinion you have decided defines you, still terrified of the exact same thing he was.